Hi.
Hey, hey y'all.
Hi, y'all.
Back at it again another week.
Another week.
Solid. It's Layla.
It's Tina.
And welcome to the Reality Podcast.
Welcome.
We have a fun video for you guys
Mhm.
today, a fun episode. We are
Very.
going to just be talking about growing up sheltered. Um, because it's so common, truly.
Yeah.
So let's just jump right in.
Let's go.
Okay. So I think I want to start off with what sheltered means, the definition of sheltered.
Mhm.
So it is defined as protected from difficulties or unpleasant realities, often suggesting a lack of worldly experience or independence.
Mhm.
And I want to start with that definition because I think it's important that we have a really good idea as to what it means to grow up sheltered, because there's a difference between growing up sheltered and growing up protected. There's a
Yeah.
fine line. And I feel like oftentimes parents who shelter or coddle their children too much confuse the two. And they think that they're acting out of protection, when in reality, it's smothering and
Yeah.
sheltering. And it's maybe not for the best.
Mm-mm.
So, what do you
I
think?
agree. I agree with that definition. I think it like hit the nail on the head on what being sheltered is. Especially as growing up sheltered myself.
We both did. So,
We can definitely relate. So,
literally, I felt
so
read. Like, yeah, the definition definitely hit the nail on the head for real.
definitely.
Um, So yeah, and we just want to talk about the effects of growing up sheltered, especially now having a little bit more experience in the world, a little bit of stepping into adulthood, and what it's looked
Yes.
like for us and sheltered children growing up and becoming young adults around the
Period.
world. Because I see TikToks about stuff like this, YouTube videos all the time. So I just had to give my 2 cents,
Gotcha.
jumping on the trend. So I think one of the biggest takeaways of growing up sheltered is that it ultimately hinders development and personal growth.
Yes,
Um, and you notice that when you step into the real world and you maybe a little bit more awkward than some people or a little bit more naive. And so it just kind of leaves you in a state of vulnerability and insecurity a little bit in
yeah,
yourself, because you know that you're like a cool person, but you maybe just don't know how to operate or handle certain situations that you would have if you had been better equipped with things, rather
exactly.
than having certain unpleasant situations be ignored altogether. So I
Hmm.
think that's something that parents don't always think about when they're like protecting or hiding their kids from certain things, is the fact that inevitably your children are going to have these types of experiences. So would you rather send them out unequipped and unprepared, or just send them out with enough trust that you instilled in them certain values and tools to best handle themselves in those situations?
Right. And I'm so glad you said that because it really stems from parents not being confident in what they have instilled into their children.
Hmm.
Because if you think about it, when you're going out into the real world and you're having to experience new things, especially growing up sheltered, it's jarring. It's very
It's
culture
horrifying.
shock. It's like, why didn't y'all tell me anything?
Yeah,
And it kind of puts you in this place of, unfortunately, having to learn from the environment that you're in at the time instead of having a controlled environment somebody can teach you about things
right.
beforehand. Because, like you said, it opens you up to being vulnerable and being naive. People can now tell you whatever they want to tell you about the
Hmm.
world because you have no frame of reference
Hmm.
to what they're talking about. And it's only until you get older and you experience life more, you realize, ooh, that wasn't true. Or
Right.
I shouldn't have been through that situation, or
Exactly. It could have been avoided.
it could have been avoided if I had only had the knowledge available. So, yeah.
Exactly. And some people, unfortunately, will prey upon that. Sometimes you don't even have the opportunity to be around the type of people who will teach you. Maybe don't do that. Some people will take advantage of that. Or if they're
Yeah.
coming from homes that were a little bit different than yours, they'll kind of misconstrue your judgment on certain things. So going out into the world unequipped with no type of understanding of how certain things work is just never the move. And I feel like in the depths of my core, I truly do. I feel like sheltering children is just a way for parents to not parent.
Parent. They're not
Because
parenting. They're not.
when you're preventing your child from experiencing normal children things, whether that be relationships or social media or, whatever it is you want to hide your children from that you feel like they may not be ready for, instead of getting them ready for that and having those hard conversations, you'd rather protect your own ego and yourself and not go through that awkward conversation at all because it makes you uncomfortable rather than sitting through some discomfort with somebody that you care about to prepare them for that obstacle.
Exactly. And it
And I think,
also,
oh, go ahead.
Mhm. Oh, it just also puts the child in a place where they can no longer can trust their parent. They can no longer ask their parents questions. They're going outside of you for information. What is the whole point of sheltering your child if they're going to go away from you? You
Exactly,
know what I'm
anyways.
saying?
And that just leads to like a hyper
Yes,
independence. So now your children are learning how to problem solve without you. So now all you become is like a wallet, really. Like,
really.
what else do your children need you for if not
Exactly.
for guidance and advice? That's like the pillar of a parent.
Yes.
Someone you have to be able to be well-rounded enough to meet all of your child's needs, not just their financial ones. And if you're not even doing that,
Exactly.
then we
Then
have a
no.
whole other problem.
Yeah, that's a yeah.
Mm,
Mm-mm. You're supposed to be protecting your child, not protecting yourself, not protecting how
mm,
you view yourself, not protecting your ego, not having hard conversations because it scares you. A lot of
mm,
parents, they use their children as kind of like, or their children end up becoming collateral. That's really what it is. Because as soon as their child does step out into the real world and they realize they're not equipped certain ways, that's how we have problems of teen pregnancy. That's how we have problems of like people
jail.
really, exactly, because people are just going out in life thinking, oh, I'm just trying to live my life because my parents never let me go out. Whole
Mm,
time is you don't even know where you're going. You know what I'm saying? You're
mm,
going outside, you
no
don't know
direction.
whose arms you're running into.
Mm.
So just
Yeah,
saying.
and I think that's something that's typically coupled with a overprotective parent is that need to protect this image. They want to act like they were never children before, like they were never curious, they never had, their own ideas of what
Yes,
life was before they experienced the real world. It was
exactly.
always just about this facade and they never wanted to be real with you and be vulnerable with you. I don't know if it's just
Yes.
because they didn't know how or because they never tried. But you know, reg-
Honestly, I
mhm,
think, me personally, I think it's because, okay, you just said it. We know they've been children before.
yeah.
So it's not something that you can't just become 45. Like you were a kid before. So I think what it is a lot of people have made mistakes in their life that they're not proud of, and then they have children. And because they have not dealt with their own trauma and have dealt with their own past and actually like move forward with themselves, they personify that onto their children. Like they literally
Mhm,
put that onto their poor kids.
mhm,
Oh, you can't go outside. And their kid's like, why? Because I said so. Whole time, it's because when I went outside when I was 11 years old, I went through this.
mhm.
Because they don't tell you those things when those are the things that are important that they should tell you, you
And
know?
those are the things that show their humanity because when you create this relationship with your child of because I said so, now you're just an
Hmm.
authoritative figure. You're not a parent. I can't see you in a maternal or paternal way because that requires a level of openness that you're not willing to provide right now. So it just makes you very distant and detached. And it can feel like a stranger sometimes because it's
Yes.
like, you're telling me these things, but I'm having trouble receiving it because is it coming from my parent? Or is it coming from this big adult who's giving me
Yes.
food and giving me shelter? So then it puts you in this state of fight or flight, and you have to start to maneuver around your parents certain way. Oh, let me not say that because that's going to make them upset. And,
Hmm.
it's going to have its own
Yes.
consequences. So now you have to think about how you act around your parents, and you're, super conscious of what you say. You can't tell them certain things. So I just don't see how it benefits either party,
It
really.
doesn't. And you notice how the child is always having to be more emotionally mature than they're supposed to at that time in their life.
Exactly.
It constantly puts that emotional maturity like burden on a young adult or a young child because that parent is not willing to step into their truth and be vulnerable with their children and tell them what they went through and be open with them and have that, you know, room for dialogue. Because if you
Mm-mm.
realize with all this sheltering, there's no talking.
There's no talking. There's no
There's no
talking.
talking. There's no talking. It's very much I said what I said, do what I do. It's very
Do
strict.
what I say,
It's very
my way or the
straight to the
highway.
point. And
Yeah.
it's almost as a child you realize like, are you an NPC? Like,
Literally. It
you
literally feels
are
like you're
you
living with
real?
strangers.
Like literally you're living with strangers. So
And I think that's like something that's so important because children's needs surpass your bare minimum necessities of
yes.
food, water, shelter, clothing. Like that is simply a physical need.
Hmm.
Children have emotional needs, psychological needs. We have more needs, and children pick up on these things clearly
Hmm.
because they're learning how to navigate the world. And their first experience through that is with their family, specifically with their parents. So
Exactly.
if you're not meeting that child's emotional needs, they're just going to get used to that and accustomed to that. And not only are they going to look for that somewhere else, but eventually they're going to realize that those needs were never important. So they're never going to prioritize it for themselves. And the people that they do end up looking for to meet their needs, they're going to be okay with the fact that they may not meet those needs. And it's not that
All the
it's
way. They're going to
exactly.
continue to have that bare minimum in all of their
Hmm.
relationships and every aspect of their life. And like how
Exactly.
you said too, it's very important to understand that when you are an adult, your life is yours. It no longer matters how you were raised. It no longer matters what
Mm,
you went through. Now you have to curate the life you want for yourself. So I just feel like when it comes to being sheltered and it comes to having sheltered parents, they just chose this route because
mm,
that's the only thing that they could think to overcome what they went through in their past. And I just think it's because it's a lack of resources during their era for like
mm,
think about it. We have so much access to education. We have so much access to therapy. We
mm.
have so much access to, people, new understandings, new way of doing these things. Because often, even if you hear from your parents, they'll often be, "Oh, well, this is how I was raised."
Right. And I look how I turned out.
Yeah, yeah. So
We
hold
don't
on,
have to
tell
talk
them.
about that.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
anyways,
Hmm.
yeah, that's a good point. I understand. I understand. I do. And I try to give grace for that reason because I do think it is about resources. However, I do think it's also about the fact that sometimes they just don't try. And I don't
Very
think
true.
it's always conscious. I think it's kind of like what you said, like this
Yes,
is how I was raised. I turned out fine because they're so used to their needs not being met
they think
that
it's
they
normal.
think it's normal. So it's like, of course, they're going to perpetuate that onto what they view as an
Yeah,
extension of themselves.
exactly.
And we can talk about that too. Children are not
Hmm.
an extension of you. That's
They're
not a
no,
mini me. That's not
no,
your legacy. That is
no.
an
A
individual,
whole new
sovereign
person.
human being.
Yes. With the
That is not
personality that's not yours. It's their own.
exactly,
Their
exactly. And I think parents, specifically overprotective parents, need to give their children that room to be themselves because the
yes,
trend in overprotective parents is wanting you to be a specific way. That's why they shelter you in the first place because they
exactly.
want you to become a certain person. Because when you're not the person that they're projecting you to be to everybody else, the smart student with all A's and the perfect child who's always happy, then you're a disappointment. You're not what
Exactly.
they really wanted because they never really knew how to have a child go through uncomfortable things,
Mhm.
whether that be because they didn't experience them or because when they did experience them, they never got any type of resolution.
Mhm.
So now that they're being put in these situations, they expect a complete turnaround for some
Right.
reason.
And even when you're talking about this too, like there's this aspect of not having room to make mistakes. Because even if we're talking about being sheltered, right? The time to make your most mistakes is like high school and middle school.
Yeah,
Not when I'm finally getting out the house. You know what I'm saying?
exactly.
Like, that's
This is
not
when the
the
mistakes should be worn
time.
out.
Yes. Like it's just like you're trying so hard to stop the inevitable when you can give your children resources to deal with their problems in the now. You know
Exactly.
what I'm saying? On a micro level. Like for
Mm,
example, like how your children acts outside. You say, okay, you can go outside with your little friends to the mall by yourself, say in middle school, whatever. And they
mm,
come back and say they spent all their money. Now they learned a lesson. But guess what? They
mm.
didn't learn that lesson at 22. They
Now
learned
they
that
robbing the
lesson at
store.
Exactly.
Now what? Now you're getting a call at 2 a.m. talking about some,
Exactly.
Mom, I'm in jail. When
Yes.
we could have had these minuscule issues much younger, where we could have learned the lesson then and prevented this.
Exactly. Because I also think it's comes from this place of now when you are older and now you're no longer quote unquote sheltered, you're kind of having to teach yourself. You're kind of having to parent yourself. But it's
But
very hard to parent yourself on nothing. Yeah, no
exactly.
basis.
And that's the thing. They think because they've sheltered you from everything, for some reason, they
Some
think
reason. I don't
that
understand this.
you are just the perfect candidate for real life. Like,
When you are
okay, go ahead.
when in
Like, you're
reality,
ready.
you're the perfect candidate for being misled, for being
Exactly.
coerced, for
Hmm.
being like just a bunch of things
Manipulated.
manipulated. I mean, somebody can see that you're, you know, sheltered from a mile away. Like it's
Yeah,
so
it's
easy.
obvious.
Yeah,
It's
it's
very
very
obvious,
obvious.
unfortunately.
Oh gosh, it hurts.
It
Ah,
hurts. It does, but it's like, in a way, I'm kind of grateful for being able
mm,
to parent myself because it allows me to have my own perceptions and ideas, even if it is from not necessarily from a place of rebellion, but not from their approval. And I think that's
yes,
something that sheltered children have to learn to live without is your parents' approval. Because
yes,
one thing about them, if it's not within their realm of understanding, they're not going to approve. They
yes.
don't really have an interest for things outside of their field of view. So going out of your way to please them, it's just never going to work. And that just goes for anybody because
Mhm.
that pipeline of sheltered child to people pleaser is
I
instantaneous.
mean, quick.
Yeah. So I think it's really important to, that's why I don't really have that type of regret anymore about the way I was raised because I can see how it's brought me to a place of self-discovery on my own terms. So I can figure
Yeah.
out who I was on my own terms. And with the years of disapproval from my parents, it's built me up enough to where I don't care anymore. And I'm glad
Literally
because some people chase their parents' approval
forever.
forever.
Yeah, that's sick. Mm.
And that's, to me, that's worse.
Yeah, I
So,
agree. I
yeah.
agree. Mm. And I feel like, like you said, how you're at this place where you can now parent yourself and now you get to, decenter your parents, decenter those ideologies and pick and choose and refuse what you want.
Hmm.
It's this idea of realizing that you're no longer in a box, you have the whole open world. And I think because of the sheltering, it made you realize like that was your safe place. And you can
Hmm.
still build your safe place in the real world. You know what I'm saying? You
Hmm.
can still have your space. You can still curate your world in a sense on a, micro scale. But
Yeah.
also don't be scared to take risks. Don't be scared to
Right.
go outside. Don't be scared to
Hmm.
experience life. It's this idea of trusting yourself and
Hmm.
really just trusting your ability to not be, how do I say it? What's the best word I
To
can
make decisions.
Right, trusting yourself to make decisions for yourself, um, to really just be confident in yourself and
Yeah.
go out into the real world. So it's a
I
beautiful
think
thing.
it
So
is.
yeah.
And I think it can be a really like uncanny experience
Oh
to
yeah.
like feel autonomy for the first time in your life and realize
Yeah.
like, oh shit, like it's really like in my
Oh, it's
hands
really on
now.
me.
But like I had that moment and I realized I quickly transmuted it into this perspective of this is what I always wanted. Like I always
Mhm.
wanted, and it was from the littlest things from picking what I wore to the foods I ate to the music I listened to. Like I just realized, okay, it's all up to me now. And
Yes.
that kind of just created this immediate bond with myself that I didn't have before of trust and sanctity that I
Mhm.
knew I was going to be okay because I had me. And I feel like it was worth coming to terms with that for me.
Definitely. I'm a big person on the journey is what's important. It's not the end goal. Like how you
Hmm.
said, like even me in my experience growing up sheltered, it really turned me into the mature woman I am right now. Every experience has led me to where I am now. So it's it's just beautiful to kind of watch yourself um change
Blossom.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and blossom into the person, like you said, you always wanted to be. And then also have this ability to constantly change what I like, constantly change
Right.
the type of person I am, be my own individual. So there's just no limits
Mhm.
when it comes to who you are. So yeah.
I agree. And I feel like once you decenter your parents, like
Oh,
that
world's
makes
easy. Everything's easy after that. I mean,
like after
that's
that,
all
it's
you
kind of
needed.
like, okay, yeah. Because like
Yes.
oftentimes we put parents on a pedestal because yes, they brought you into this life, but one,
Hmm.
without my consent. And two, um, did you really want a child, a person, or were y'all just caught up one night? You know, we got to be
No.
honest with ourselves here. How many of y'all
Amen.
were brought here on purpose?
Mm,
So that's already giving us the foundation, right? Right. So
yeah.
how are we gonna build on that?
Mm,
Two people who weren't really ready to be parents just so happened to be parents, and then they had you. It wasn't like
exactly.
my mom saved the city and my dad's a war hero, and they came together and they
Yes.
made me. Like it's not
Yeah.
always like that. So that's why I'd be
Mm.
confused when we talk about a legacy, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. They just want somebody with their last name.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of odd, but
A little bit.
but
Definitely a little bit. Definitely a little bit.
yeah, but sometimes you have to realize that your parents are people. And I think that kind of alleviates you from resentment a little bit when you realize how you may have been treated or think that you didn't get to experience because of your parents' parenting style. Because it makes you realize that not they're just people. This is their first time here too.
Mhm.
And although they did bring you here, it wasn't necessarily their job to make you whole. I feel like a parent's job is really just to equip you for the world and pass down wisdom and just protect you.
Yeah.
And they, I hate to say they did it the best way they know how, because I do feel like sometimes it's just like you didn't try. But
Yeah.
ultimately, like this is what you got. So there's
Right.
no point in like holding on to that anger or, resentment towards them because you have to accept the fact that they may never change and they may always see the world this way because this is just how they're choosing to live. And that's okay. And that's when you can
Yeah.
start to parent yourself and integrate your own beliefs and ideas of what life looks like for you. You can curate that for yourself. So,
And I feel like it kind of just stems from lack of empathy. Because, like
mm,
you said, they were doing their best. But now that we are in this present tense, and now that I'm able to express how I felt about my childhood, how do you feel about that now? And
they
how
just
will you
deflect.
change it? Exactly. So I feel like
Mhm.
from that moment where the deflection starts, that's when we need to start holding people accountable. Because I
Definitely.
cannot judge you from your past, but from this moment present, yes, I can.
Yeah, how we proceed.
Yes, I
Yeah.
can.
How we proceed after me telling you how I felt
Exactly.
growing up and maybe still feel is really going to be the
Determining
determinant
factor.
determining factor of our relationship moving forward. Because that's the thing.
Yes.
Like I said earlier, like with you overprotective parents, shielding your children from certain things. You're shielding them from experiences and chances to bond with you. Like
Yeah.
you imagine like you're crying yourself to sleep because some boy done broke your heart when you want to be crying in your mom's arm, but you can't because she gonna get mad at you for talking to a boy in the first place. So now that is a missed opportunity to
Mhm.
build a level of loyalty and trust with your child. So that just continues on. They won't need you anymore.
Yes.
So now when they're an adult and you're still acting the same way, they're not going to want a relationship with you. It's too late. And you're going to be sitting there in
Mhm.
your retirement home thinking, damn, where did it all go wrong? I was the perfect parent. I gave them a roof and food. You missed out on so much of their life and you never even knew.
Mhm.
And you never even cared to know because, like
Mhm.
you said, it protected your ego and it protected you from having to deal with the discomfort of that awkward conversation. But awkward conversations are what make relationships work.
Exactly. Again, goes back to the lack of dialogue. It's
Hmm.
this act of I'm the parent, you're the child, you don't know anything. But in
Hmm.
reality, if they would open their ears, their children can teach them a lot.
That too. And I think it's like that level of pride too. They don't want to learn from their children. They think, I'm the parent, I've been here longer, I know more than you. But children are lessons, like first and
Yes.
foremost. Like if you want to equate your child to anything, it's a lesson.
Hmm.
There's so much to learn from children, even if it's not like an intentional, conscious thing that you're learning from them. You're learning something. You're learning something about yourself. You're learning something about, how to parent, how to operate in the world. Because parenting, I feel like it could change you if you allow it to. Too often parents use their children as a means of um, what's a good word? Like as just another projection instead of
Yeah,
a reflection.
exactly.
Because children can very clearly show you what it is that you need to work on. Any relationship will do that, but children specifically, because not only did they come from you, but now as they get older, they start to reject you and just kind of deter from you, and not maybe consciously or from a necessary malicious place, but just from growing up and not only in a different time, but just as a different person, as an individual. So as they're
Yes.
starting to develop autonomy, they can see the things that they would have preferred to have in a
Yes.
childhood or from a mother or father. So
Yeah.
it's up to you to now take accountability and step up, or you're just going to start projecting and putting this victim mentality on yourself about being a bad parent when nobody said that.
Exactly.
We're just asking you to acknowledge.
Exactly. And I think it's important too to remember that children have so much grace for their parents. You know what I'm saying? Like, no matter what we say, you're going to have a level of grace for your parents where you will be open to when they come to you.
Mhm.
So I just feel like as a child, it's like you kind of get heartbroken twice when you
So
realize
many
they don't even,
times,
you're right, so many
so many
times.
times.
But it's like when they double down on
Mm,
that feeling and
yeah,
you're just sitting here like I've expressed it to you in every way I know how,
exactly.
and you still give me nothing.
And it shouldn't be on the child to do that in the first place.
No.
Like, as the adult, you should have the emotional maturity and intelligence to see those signs before your child does, one,
Hmm.
and to be open and accepting to what your child is telling you. That's just how communication works. It's supposed to be, a receptive feedback loop. If we're
Hmm.
not getting that, why are we having kids?
Hmm.
No, but for real, like, if you are not in a place mentally and emotionally, why are you having kids?
Good. Hmm.
Yes, I chamomile.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah.
Hello.
So I just wanted to run down a quick little list of what my opinion is on child needs. This is
Oh,
just
let's hear
my
this.
idea.
Let's
Okay.
go.
So I have divided it into sections of emotional, mental, and physical. I already touched on emotional and mental, but I'll just drop some quick tidbits. So I think it's very important that we cover all three of these aspects, or at least we're capable of these aspects when we're thinking about having children,
Period.
because children, having them is low-key selfish in the first place. So at least give them a good quality of life if you're going to do so.
Literally.
Okay, so for emotional, children need love, care, affection, attention, a safe space for expression and communication.
Mhm.
And I'll explain briefly. Love, that's pretty obvious as to why a child would need love. Attention, stop letting the iPad raise your kids.
Please.
Affection, give the child a hug or they're going to want physical touch from other people.
Hmm.
A safe space for expression and communication. Let your children be themselves. Stop
Please.
trying to force your children to do things that you didn't get to do in your glory days.
And let them be open to experience things that they want to do. Like, say they want to do play the guitar, but you like the piano. Let them play the guitar.
Let them play the
Let
guitar.
them do what they want to do.
Exactly. And communication, like we talked about, communication is so trivial. There's an episode of Abbott Elementary. I think it's like the newest one.
Hmm.
And there's like this whole controversy because the kids love this book and it's about like a little black wizard. I think it's boy, little black wizard boy. And he is just like I don't remember what the book is about, but that's basically the summary. Like, it was a black little wizard boy and everybody loved the book, regardless. But there was this one mom who didn't like the fact that he was a wizard. She thought it was witchcraft and she's a Christian. Mind you,
Oh,
no shade, but she literally has the word bitch tattooed in big bold ink on her chest. Now, no shade, but I just feel like that has to be mentioned. I'm sorry. So
oh,
she wants the book off the shelves. She doesn't want the kid reading the book, nothing. And she feels like he's also like disrespectful a little bit. So, anyways, they come to the conclusion of the whole thing that the book will stay on the shelf just talk to your kids. If you don't like the content of the book, why hide the
Literally,
book? And you can expose them to the book. Just talk to them about it, you know?
it's again the sheltering.
It's the sheltering. And I think it's really important to experience things that we do not like because it not only fortifies your reasons for liking something else, but it also gives you a broader perspective as to why you may not like this or why something else is a better alternative. And it
Exactly.
gives room for conversation.
Literally.
Why don't you like this book, mommy? Because I said so. Okay. Well, there goes that
Literally
conversation.
what?
Like, why are you guys parenting with closed conversations? Where does that get us?
I think it's because they know that they don't really know why they don't like it sometimes. I
Yeah,
think it's
they
this
don't have a
idea
reason.
because sometimes, like I said, I think it's kind of built off of their own traumas and their own past and their own experiences that they're not willing to talk about
Hmm.
or they haven't come to terms within themselves. So
Yeah,
they'd rather just say, "Oh, just don't do that," or "Don't worry about that," because
yeah.
it's just something they haven't,
But
experienced.
that kind of goes into my next one too about the mental care that children need. And the
Mm.
biggest takeaway from that to me is giving your child intellectual stimulation that's not limited to your point of view. Because all you overprotective parents
Yes.
want a scholar. But the minute your child starts picking up sociology, philosophy, theology, suddenly y'all aren't interested in school anymore.
Yeah. Mm.
Suddenly now
Suddenly
everything's
it's that
corrupt.
school that's
It's
getting
that
you.
college.
It's the
You
college.
send your kids to college and they come back with
Like,
a whole new mindset.
whole new mindset.
Isn't that the point though?
Why would you not want me to curate my own thoughts for myself?
Exactly. Like, why can I not have my own cognitive ability without your influence?
And again, it's this idea that your children are an extension of you rather
Mm.
than a new person and a new human being. So,
Because I think education is power, and limiting your child to a certain type of education in this vast world is just that. It's limiting. It's
very,
limiting mentally, it's limiting emotionally, because sometimes these things that you learn, it gives you a sense of patience, a sense of empathy, and that's something I think the previous generation needs.
yeah,
So I don't see how diminishing, one's pursuit of higher education and topics that may make you uncomfortable or that you're just not the most versed in, so you're not as interested.
right.
I don't see how that is beneficial for the child. It just goes back to you being selfish.
Yeah, because it's really just rooted in fear. It's really rooted in fear of different
Mm,
because something different I just can't understand because it's different than me.
mm,
You know what I'm saying? It's this fear of something that maybe they can't explain to you. Maybe it's fear of when, they realize they're lacking in certain ways. So it's kind of this because I mean, as kids, you think your parents know everything.
mm.
Then the older you get, you realize y'all don't really know nothing for real,
Yeah.
do you?
Y'all
Y'all
don't
don't
really
really,
know
don't really know
anything.
anything for real. Um, but it's like, of course they have experience. Of course they have these things, you know what I'm saying? And nobody's taking away from anybody's, real life. But it's just important to realize that their experience is like centered around themselves. Like if you know some
Mm,
people, they'll be like, yeah, my parents lived in this small town. My grandparents live here. Their grandparents live here. I'm like, nobody left this
nobody lied.
town.
Yeah.
Nobody left. Like everyone, of course you're gonna think the same. Of course it's gonna be the norm because it's what everyone thinks around you. A lot of times
Mm,
people don't surround themselves with people who have a different opinion than them, and that's what higher education breeds. That's what you have around you in college. You have people from so many different type of backgrounds coming into
mhm,
one place and now communicating and having dialogue and sharing different experiences. And you realize, oh, the world is so much bigger than
mhm.
my small town that I was in.
And that's why it's so important for children to expose their children to certain things, or at least prepare them from those types of things, because that's how you get people, insensitive people who are acting really
Yeah.
ignorant towards other people
Yes.
and where they come from. And, just topics in school that may come up or on the work field. People don't know how to act, people don't know how to talk to people because of how they were raised. So it does play a big role in the things that you give your children access to, but I just feel like education, certain forms of media, it shouldn't be such a black and white conversation. Like
Ever.
there's so much gray in between, and you'd
Yes.
rather go past that because you're worried about what might happen instead of having confidence in the fact that your child is smart enough, or, just giving your child the opportunity to figure things out for themselves and include you. That's what I never understood about sheltering parents. It's like
They're
you
never
would
included.
rather not be included at all than be included in something a little bit messy or something that your child needs your help with.
Yeah,
Like, I don't get that. You're excluding yourself.
exactly. Mm,
Okay.
mm.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. I could talk about this for hours.
Yeah, we really could.
So, so I'm gonna just we could wrap it up here. I do have a little tea quote that I'd like to leave you with
Yeah.
for my triple mint tea. And it reads, "One touch of nature makes the whole world kin." William Shakespeare. That's beautiful.
Oh, it
That's so beautiful.
is.
Y'all go touch some grass.
Please.
Feel the sun.
Yes.
Winter's leaving. Spring is coming. We're all blossoming,
Yes.
enjoying the March season.
That too.
So, yeah, touch the grass, feel the rain on your skin.
And think for yourself.
Exactly. And
Hmm.
have a wonderful week. Thank you for listening.
Bye.
Bye.